All right. Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Joey D'Souza. I'm the Vice President of External Engagement here at the Able Trust. And I want to first thank everybody for taking some time out this afternoon to join us today to learn about year-end fundraising and to get some tips and everything from our friends at the Network for Good. Like the screen says, we are dedicated to supporting a disability inclusive workforce here in Florida. And we know that it truly does take a village to help really move that needle to ensure that Florida's people with disabilities are included in our workforce. And so this webinar, as well as a lot of other communication pieces that we put out, are there to help support that larger and broader community. You are partners. And so again, thank you for joining us. If you're not already following us on Twitter or Facebook or LinkedIn, please make sure to either join and follow us yourself personally, or make sure your organization is following us. That's where we are really putting out a lot of our information, connecting you to resources that we are providing to our partners around the state, as well as recordings of not only today's webinar, but also previous webinars that we are putting on for everybody. So with that being said, today's webinar is being recorded, and we will try to get this out to you all as soon as possible, 24 or 48 hours from today. And with that, I'm going to introduce Maria Azzurri and Jack Murphy from the Network from Good, who are going to be our facilitators and presenters today. Oh, last thing, and I knew I was going to forget it, and that's why I made myself a note. Please put all of your questions during the presentation today into the Q&A box. What I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of keep track of all of those, and then towards the end of the presentation, we're going to have a Q&A period, and so I'm going to what I'm going to do is take all those questions that have been put into the box and pose them to Maria. So again, please use the Q&A box. And Maria, I'm going to turn it over to you to kick us off. Thanks again, everybody.
Thank you so much, Joey and Alice. And I know she can't join us today, and everybody else at the Able Trust. Jack and I are so excited to be here today and be able to share a little bit about what we do and the focus on aligning program impact and communications for successful year-end fundraising. I am the Senior Director of Impact and Sustainability, and Jack, who will pop in at the end of the actual training piece and talk about his work and what he's going to share. He's our Director of Community Impact. And so you'll see me kind of my eyes looking at two screens because I'm looking at my presentation in two different modes for you, the audience, and also my notes to make sure that I don't miss anything. But like Joey said, please put your chats in or your questions in the chat, and we'll try to get to as many of them as possible at the end. And all of the templates that I'll be sharing and showing you today, I will also share in the resources and tools with the slide deck in 24 to 40 hours, like Joey said. So all the things are going to be shared, and that's so that you can leverage as many of the tools as will be helpful to you, hopefully, as you plan your year-end fundraising. So without further, we're just going to get started because we have a lot to cover today. Let's see, we know what we're here for. We already went through the kind of household stuff. After the workshop, Jack is going to talk about our unique fundraising program and partnership that we're exploring together with the Able Trust called the Jumpstart Capacity Building Program, and he'll share a quick overview, and then we'll go to Q&A. Some light housekeeping. I know we're all expert Zoomers at this point. You know, headphones, Chrome, questions, and then we'll all send the stuff out to you. It's a little bit about Network for Good. We were founded as a nonprofit in 2001, right after 9/11. Network for Good has processed over $3.75 billion in donations for over 350,000 nonprofits. We are a hybrid B Corp, and we partner with nonprofits, grant makers, and corporations nationwide to grow your good through innovative capacity building program, technology, and professional services. And who am I? Like I said, I'm the Senior Director of Impact and Sustainability. But first and foremost, my perspective is formed of my family immigrated. Actually, I live in Atlanta, but I grew up in Sarasota, Florida. So I'm a lifelong Floridian. My dad is why I still live in Florida. We go to Florida and the beach at Siesta Key and Clearwater every chance we get. But my claim to fame is really, I've been a social worker for over 24 years now, and I come from a really community embedded practice. Work a lot with public health, education, differing needs and special population groups. I've worked a lot within the disability services areas, both through intellectual differences, neurotypical differences, and then just brain injury as well. Also within the disability services, within the criminal justice system from the perspective of the defense. So I've done quite a bit of work within incarceration and special needs. I also have 3 boys. I teach at Georgia State. I teach fundraising, program design, and all that to say that I sat where you are, I sit where you are. I work a lot on from the nonprofit perspective of creating strong programs that meet a need in the community, and that then how do we expand those, and how do we build upon those, and how do we get more support for those, right, through grant writing, through donations, through in-kind, all those things. So I'm not coming at it from a removed perspective. I'm very much embedded in community-based work and practice, and have been for a really, really long time. And from really the perspective of what I like to call radical inclusivity. So I think that I'm preaching to the choir here with that. Just like we shared in the description, we're going to talk about communicating the opportunity and the impact, how to engage diversely with donors through consistent communications and contact. We're going to talk about how we develop fundraising strategies. We're going to go into designing and planning communications and fundraising appeals. We're going to share tools and templates. And then really throughout the presentation and afterwards, hopefully take back to your teams this knowledge of understanding how ongoing communications about impact should be aligned with core donor engagement and fundraising strategy. We're really going to break down what does fundraising mean. It's much more than calling up a prospect and asking for a check. And so we're really going to dive into really some key marketing, core marketing and fundraising aspects of fundraising. So we hope that this knowledge and information serves you well and gives you some things to think about. So overall, what is nonprofit sustainability, right? Nonprofit sustainability is commonly used to describe a nonprofit that can sustain itself over the long term, perpetuating its ability to fulfill its mission, right? Be here for the long haul. Sustainability in the nonprofit context includes the concepts of obviously financial sustainability, as well as leadership succession planning, adaptability, and strategic planning. All this according to the Council of Nonprofits. And we've all really learned these things this last year and a half, right? Financial sustainability, obviously leadership planning, adaptability, strategic planning, all of that has been at the heart of, I'm sure, all of the work that you all do and that we do as well at Network for Good. And so how do we remain financially healthy throughout this process that is constantly moving and adapting? And really, how are we sharing that with our funders? So it brings us to the top question, right? How are you constantly or consistently communicating the opportunity and the impact as you engage with your diverse stakeholders? There's a flow and an interaction, right, between all of the things that our nonprofit is responsible for. And we typically focus on 1 or 2 of these. But the reality is that we're constantly communicating all of these things, right? What are our strategies? What are our goals? How is our board of directors involved in the work that we do, both in communicating and championing our cause, and also in prospecting? That's it for a different conversation, but this is a good slide to share with your team and with your board overall, because there's a lot that we do, right? We're also talking constantly about our programs, right? ABC, we might have 1 program, we might have 5 programs, right? And then fundraising, which is where we're going to stand today, is looking at fundraising plan strategy, grants, contracts, fee for service. But obviously, as you can see within fundraising, planning, and strategy, we have a ton of different things that we're doing at that time. And so fundraising planning, marketing planning, communications and content planning, all of that impacts our ability to fundraise. And then how do we evaluate the impact of our work, both from, yes, everybody's going to get a copy of the slides. Slide decks are going to be, slide deck will be shared, as well as the templates that I'll be getting into at the end of the presentation. So we have to be evaluating what we're doing, which is often where we hang out least in time, right? Are we evaluating our programs? We're evaluating our fundraising, right? How did what we did this last year work? What worked really well? What didn't work well? What do we want to continue? What are we rethinking? What are we cutting out, right? And then also within our operations. And this brings us back to our mission and vision, making sure that we're aligned. So this is a constant flow, right? Constant flow. So the breakdown of fundraising is and includes marketing, we'll start at the bottom here, content development, marketing and communications, and donor engagement and cultivation, right? And all of these pieces really encompass what fundraising is. Most people, when you think about you say fundraising, they think that you're just getting checks or collecting donations from all the different methods, right? But that's really the end stage of fundraising. Most folks don't know about content development, content collateral pieces. We're going to talk about those. Those are very marketing centered terms. And then we don't think about a ton marketing communications. How are we communicating our impact, our cause, who we are, what we do, why we do it this way, right? And then when we do all those, we have those pieces to communicate and build relationships, steward relationships, cultivate those relationships for donor management, right, for the long term. So really, we start with content development, move around the circle. We understand too, and I certainly understand that a lot of times it's one person doing this or 1.5. Some companies are lucky enough to have a whole team that focuses on these, but that's not the typical nonprofit. I always say, unless you're St. Jude's or the American Cancer Society or Red Cross, right? Most of us are just trying to do the best we can with these. And typically we do 1 or 2 of these better than we do the other one, or maybe 1 out of 3, right? That's important to know and kind of look at where we are. So pausing right here for a moment, if you can light up the chat, which element of these 3 do you focus on least? You can just write that in the chat, just to kind of get a sense of where we are. Don't be shy. So do you focus the least on developing content, like 1-pagers, half-pagers, storytelling, donor management, cultivation, content, thank you, content development, donor cultivation, content marketing, communications? Thank you for sharing that. It is important to understand what we do least and start thinking about, through hopefully this training will give you some ideas to do a little bit of each one consistently throughout the year. And that's where you start really seeing the difference in the fundraising and the revenue that we bring in, is through the consistency of content, marketing, communications, and then using that to steward donations. I'm going to break it down and make it simple. Thank you for your answers. So, it's still true, right? Why do people give to your organization? Do you know, right? Donors give out of a desire to help. That's still true, right? And people, we need to know the why. Do you have surveys or polls that you give out? Why are people committed to giving to you? Why have they been giving? If they gave once or twice, why did they? If they're monthly recurring givers, if they give at the end of the year, one bigger sum, right? This is a good time to think about how you arrive at knowing this information. Why are our donors giving to us? What resonates with them, right? And so we're going to talk about surveys and the importance of always collecting ABC, always be collecting information and understanding who your donors are, why they give, what motivates them. Because knowing what motivates them has a lot to do with the content that we share and the way that we share and engage them. So integrated fundraising is really the best practice. And what do we mean by that? We're going to talk about why nonprofits should embrace a marketing mindset for fundraising, because it still works, right? It still works. These are all integrated fundraising methods. And this visual isn't meant to overwhelm or make you nervous or anxious, right? Or think about, oh my gosh, we only do one of those. This is to be excited about and to develop a goal or 2. What could we do a little differently this quarter? And then heading into 2022, what 2 fundraising avenues do we want to expand? It does work. And we're going to talk about the opportunity to do so. So, and Network for Good led a 3-year study, and it revealed some pretty important information and bright spots for organizations that used what we call, again, marketing terminology, multi-channel campaigns to solicit donors and engage them with content. So nonprofits that used 2 or more digital channels to engage donors before year-end appeals doubled their yield in 2018 over 2016. So that's 2 or more digital channels, thinking your website page, right? Or Facebook and Instagram, right? Those are 2 digital channels. Then number 2, the donors who were engaged by multi-channel touches, meaning they saw your information through 2 channels, had an average gift size of $301 compared to those who were not at just $272, right? That's a lot of money over the year left on the table. And among those same donors, nonprofits saw nearly 12% increase in donor retention compared to those who did not use multi-channel communication. They saw a 31% drop. So there's a lot of evidence, a ton of evidence that the more we engage through varied communications with our donors or with our prospective universe of donors, with our stakeholders, with our community members, the more we're engaging, the more funding we will bring in. That's pretty true across the board, and this stat holds true. So this is a visual that I use a lot in teaching program development and design, and looking at there's this alignment, communicating for impact, right? We have to start up when you might ask yourself, what are we talking about when we think about content, right? We're looking at sharing our program outcomes, right? And these are all interdependent. They flow, they're consistent. We have various things happening at different times, right? But we want to share our programs, our impact, the things that we're doing, right? What's positive? What are we increasing positive? What are we decreasing negative, right? And sharing that, right? And so our driving questions are, what are our programs accomplishing? How do we know this, right? Again, that goes back to science, right? Reliability and validity. How do we know this is true? How are we creating to share our accomplishments and impact? How are we telling our story of the ways that we're improving our community? What are we using? How are we using our program impact and communications to fundraise? What were the results, right? All of this is consistent. All of this is consistent, and it's ongoing. So again, I'm asking you to light up the chat. When you think about your programs, what are you doing, right? As in thinking about verbs, right? We're improving, we're increasing, we're expanding, we're providing, we're reducing, right? So think about what your mission is, and or what one of your programs does or is meant to do. And put a quick phrase in there. We elevate the voice of youth in the workplace. We elevate, or we expand upon, we increase the opportunities to share some things as to what your organization does or what a program does. Increasing awareness for intellectual and developmental disabilities. Great, thank you, Jennifer. Educating, increase independence. Wonderful, helping individuals be independent. Thank you, Sherry and Brittany. We create opportunities for those with mental illness to learn skills, gain employment, absolutely. So looking at, Michael, the next, right, and improving lives and increasing advocacy for, right? The next piece of that is, so what, right? So that what happens, right? And so we're communicating that constantly, and we're building the communications that way, which we'll get more into. We maximize independence and provide employment opportunities for persons with visual impairment so that our community can, right? What is it about that work? So drilling down to the specific verbs. And that then gets into outcomes and specific actions that we take. Empowering those with developmental disabilities by ABC, right? That's how we start outlining the content and the communications. Advancing behavior and educational goals for persons with intellectual and developmental disabilities, so that what can happen, right? So that we're always talking about or trying to increase the positive and decrease the negative, right? And that comes from old social work, right? Behavior change modification, which I'm sure a lot of you work within, right? We're trying to increase positive and decrease negative, so that, because in order to, right, that's how we start really thinking about the backbone of our content communications. why do we do these things? And why do we want to provide and be part of a community that provides these supports and resources, right? Not just because it's important to the people who need the services, but what does it say about our community vitality, our community health, right? Who we are as a group of people living together, right? So thinking about that reciprocity and creating whole and healthy communities for everybody, right? That's really important. That's often missing. A lot of times we focus on the folks that we serve. And so focusing on why does it benefit all of us to have inclusive services within our community, and different ones at that, right? Thank you for indulging me. This might be a good exercise or quick activity to lead with your team or with your board, right? Is what are we doing? What are our programs doing? And then with the board, what is the board doing to further the mission? And I like to talk about kind of quick activities you can do, or skill building activities that will help generate innovative content and communications, and also learn about how others think about the work and the importance of it, and hear from multiple perspectives on your team. Oops, sorry about that. All right, so we're going to be getting into developing fundraising strategies and tactics that foster growth and sustainability. How do we do this? I focus on these words, strategies and tactics, because it's a pretty big sentence, right? This could be something that's like people think there's a magic answer to, and there isn't. Fundraising is something that's iterative, it's repetitive. We try things, some things work better than others. We're constantly trying different strategies, different tactics. Some are bigger than others, some are quick fixes. But the idea is to break fundraising, right, as a concept or as a verb, down to what are those elements within fundraising that we're talking about. So one way that we fundraise in our tactics, right, and strategies are fundraising appeals. And these are meant to connect and inspire the reader towards an action for more than one day, right? So again, for changing the visual from circles to arrows, and I'll do this throughout different ways. I'm a visual learner, and I use color a lot. And so I like to position information different ways so that it hits different people where they are. But again, we're talking about, we want to inspire through a program outcomes, right? Through the content and communicate, and then we fundraise for it. So this is the goal of what we're always trying to do. How am I appealing to my varied constituencies, right? How do you appeal and engage your donors and your stakeholders in your community, right? This is always has to be in the back of our mind. So this is an important visual, again, to share with your team and to share with your board. This is very development, fundraising centered, conversational in terms, moves management, right? And this is what we're always trying to do, is move non-donors, which is everybody and anybody in our circle, right, in our community, virtual and otherwise, from non-donor to one-time donor. We're going to talk about subscription and recurring donor, and then special appeals like the end of the year time. And new research shows that there's no need to wait to ask people to give a subscription gift or recurring gift. New research finds that 50% of donors are open to making a subscription gift the first ask. So inviting them, right? So that means, for some of you that aren't familiar with subscription giving, we're going to think about, for example, the subscription economy has emphasized the one-to-one relationship, right? And we think about, what do we have subscriptions to in our world? Just about everything, right? A lot of things, the Netflix, Amazon, Hulu, Amazon Prime, right? Bank of America, we automate how much go to savings every week or whatever. Everything, Stitch Fix, clothing, food, right? So in the subscription economy, every company must better manage a responsive and multi-channel relationship with its customers, right? Subscription economy companies live and die by their ability to focus on their customers. So really, Netflix launched this for us in our society and really revolutionized subscription giving, right? Now the formula for growth is focused on monetizing long-term relationships, right? So looking at, how do we create long-term relationships? What does this mean for nonprofits? Subscriber retention on the whole across products, from Netflix to gym to clothing companies, is that 70% of folks who subscribe to giving in those or paying for those services, they're retained year over year. Donor retention within nonprofits is 37% because we are not asking. That is the biggest reason. There's no other reason as to why that's happening, but we are not leveraging the subscription economy, right? So that's a lot of money to be left on the table. So thinking about 50% of donors will say yes to subscription giving the first time they're asked and upon their first donation. Now we're moving to communications channels where we talked about, right, what are those multi-channel communications? Again, that's very marketing heavy speak. Simply what it is these different ways that we communicate with people, channels, right? Thinking about a television, right, old school, with all of these different channels or different ways that we communicate to our stakeholders and with our donors and our universe of donors through email, direct mail, social media. Within social media, right, we have a few, 4 or 5 buckets: text, phone calls, video messaging, digital advertising, right? Think Facebook, think LinkedIn, website banner. For those of you that don't know what that is, it's when you open up your website, a banner immediately falls down and it's driving them. For example, you have an end of the year campaign or a back to school appeal, right? So a banner falls down, inviting the person on your website to learn more. So they click, learn more about that specific fundraising appeal that you have going on. And then they get to click quickly to give money. So we're going to talk about, again, the fluidity of that and creating a fast and effective customer experience so that they're clicking the fewest amount of times possible to get to a donation box. But these are communication channels. And again, aligning for impact. I repeat this throughout the presentation several different times because it's so important. And I want you, anything you walk away with is that you have got to have your content, your communications, your engagement, your fundraising aligned, right? There's no magic bullet or portal that you can magically go through where you get to prospecting donors, solicitations, the checks and the money's coming in without communicating your outcomes, creating content, and sharing and engaging. So this, another quick thing to print out, to share with your board, to share with your team, your volunteers. This is, for example, our team here at Network for Good. We have a marketing team, and I meet with them usually the beginning of the month before to plan the following month's content, collaterals. When are we going to engage? The timeline, all of that. What is our goal for next month? We're always usually 4 to 6 weeks ahead. And it does take intention. In the beginning, it was hard. It seemed like it was requiring so much of all of our brains. But now we have it down because we have these templates set. So I'll be sharing those as well. But thinking about this is the template. How are we sharing our outcomes, the content we're creating? How are we engaging with our different donors? And how is that helping us? How are we using that to fundraise? Oops, excuse me, I have multiple screens going in. So thinking another way that we think about fundraising is remembering that consumers are donors, right? Our missions are our products. And when we're engaging or fundraising, we need to leverage their buying and communication preferences. I fully understand as a social worker that we don't want to think about the business aspect, but it's just not feasible in this day where people have so much competing for their time, their attention, their giving, right? So we really have to think about how are we communicating with our consumers, right? Our donors. And how are you making it relevant to buy your product, right? Your impact, your program, that's what your product is, right? So why would a consumer want to buy your product? Thinking, why would a donor, right, want to invest in your mission, in the impact that you're helping create or bring about? How are you sharing your impact with your stakeholders, your shareholders? So thinking about it from that very business perspective, it does really help laser focus on how are we communicating our value, our impact. When we think about something, I'm gonna go ahead and say it, as trivial as a pair of sneakers that costs $300. Why do people buy that? Why do people buy a $180 pair of jeans, right? So think about the product and think about your program being the intervention and folks really investing in the impact that your intervention brings about. Why is that important? How are we communicating that? It helps to look at it from that lens also, to think about what might be we be missing in the way we talk and share our mission, right? What tools do we need for a fundraising appeal? Oops, sorry, that was next screen. Here we go. So one of the tools we need, obviously, is to gather information. During a crisis, which seemed like last year was always a crisis, I want to act quickly with the available resources you currently have. And also a crisis might be something like, we had a recent nonprofit leader that we were talking about. They were about to open and do a ribbon cutting ceremony for a new shelter for women, and their new shelter flooded, right, in Indiana. And so they had to postpone, right? So that's also a crisis. Ideally, we're capturing essential information on an ongoing, consistent basis year-round, right? Through newsletters, through quick surveys. We're confirming communication preferences and noting it in our database, whether that's if you have a donor management database, or if it's Excel still at this point, which is fine, right? How are you communicating? How are you confirming communication preferences, and how are you noting these? We're collecting ideas and celebrating achievements, right, throughout the year. We create groups for special interests, right? Some folks might be interested in supporting folks with mental illness more than other aspects of disabilities. Some folks might want to focus on youth. Some might want to focus on older homebound adults with learning disabilities, right? So looking at how might we create special groups and communicate differently. That's talking about segmentation. And then the ABC I mentioned earlier, always be collecting, right? This is an important part of, again, getting to know your donor beyond the transaction and beyond the check. Who are they? Why are they giving? Why did they give, right? Communication, again, reminder, is a dialogue and a conversation. It's not a monologue. So we'll be talking a lot about how to focus on donors and also helping tell their story. Why do they donate to you, and sharing that as a part of your campaign. How many of you have a form to create donor interest and capture your data, right? This is a big aspect of fundraising, right? We're growing our database, right? That's always so important, because the way that we are able to share and engage, we're able to do that more if we have a list of folks to send our information to, right? So how are we always collecting donor survey data, and how are we capturing it, right? We should be doing something minimally 3 times a year to just check in with donors, right? We want to be sure we're using your correct name and spelling. Will you confirm your email? Periodically, we would like to call you to offer thanks or share updates, right? Giving them the opportunity to stay connected throughout the year and to update information is really important. Also at the bottom, you might want to add a question to share our mission with a friend, right? And encourage folks to, if they're learning more about you, to encourage them to share with their circle. Again, always thinking about how are we engaging and reaching new volunteer donors, right? I'm sorry, this keeps hard to navigate the arrows sometimes. So again, another slide on collecting email and mobile numbers wherever we go, just everywhere you go, continuously adding and updating your database. Something to think about, and something that I'm so surprised as to how many nonprofit leaders don't do, is really engaging your board of directors as a sphere to expand your sphere of influence, right? And your ecosystem, right? And doing some mining and having board members, right? Share the information of your nonprofit with 10 of their friends or family, right? So simple things like that. How are we continuously adding and increasing our list? There's forms from your website that you can create that you can have up constantly, encouraging people to that. It's also really important to make it easy to collect, right? Like, for example, if you're doing your school-based service, right? First day of school for parents, example, or back to school night, or meet the teacher day, or if you're at different outings, right? Making it simple to stop in, check in, update your preferences, and build that in with intentionality and simplicity. Send out a request, right? These are ways to constantly be updating and gathering new information. Here we're talking about our audiences, right? Determining our audiences and our purpose. So we want to go and think about acquiring, so acquisition from non-donor to donor. Conversion, I want to think about from donor to subscription donor. I want to think about the retention, so thinking about lapsed and annual renewals. So retaining our donors. Research shows that it's really hard to lose a donor, and that it's actually easy to keep a donor in your cycle through just simple, consistent cultivation of the relationship. Again, relationship beyond the one-time check, and upgrade, increasing in gift amount. So we're looking at how do we acquire, how do we convert, how do we retain or regain once we've lost a donor, or a donor gave maybe 2-3 months in a row, maybe in $10, $15, that's wonderful, but they haven't given for a couple of months. How might we reach out to them differently? Because it is a different communication tactic, right? How about if we had annual donors that gave at the end of the year or at a certain time of the year, and they'd given for 2 to 3 years in a row, and last year they didn't give? How do we reach out and regain the connection with them, the relationship, and invite them to come back into our fold? And then how do we upgrade? Maybe if somebody's been giving for, say, $5, $10 a month, would they consider giving $15 a month if they've been giving $10 a month for 3-4 months? If they've been giving $100 a year for the last 3 years, would they consider a gift of $125 or $135, right? So do we have the ability to segment our donors and look at, I'm going to share a template with you all so that you can segment your donors by donor level and donor amount, and then think about how do we communicate and reach out to these folks differently, because it is a different tactic. And ways to engage donors, right, is consistent. We have to think about constantly. So that's why part of this exercise too is good to do with your board and your team once a month or once a quarter, and thinking about, just as a brainstorming exercise, as a team building exercise, right, as a mission building exercise, how are we engaging donors? How are we sharing our mission, right? How are we sharing our goals? How are we sharing our impact? How you want to share how you're serving clients now, how you've remained in service during COVID, how it's pivoted, how you've had to flex, right? You want to share measures you've taken and how you're continuing to serve during these times of uncertainty. Share your community stories and your clients and your family stories about how they're doing and how they're managing. Explain, right? You want to share and engage with donors how your budget is being impacted. You want to engage them as advocates for your cause. Again, not just for the services that you provide for the folks who need it, but what about for the communities that include the services? Why is it important for the community at large to have services for everybody's well-being? And suggest ways they can help. And this is something that we're doing consistently, you know, year-round, month after month. Talking back about segmentation. Giving frequency, recurring, one-time, consistent donors, lapsed or non-donors, giving levels, available channels and database, affinity and areas of interest. Again, why do they give? Do they have a specific reason why they give, or a specific area of interest of giving, whether it's youth, young adults, young children, parents, support, caregivers, right? Understanding, asking a few questions in your surveys, in your periodic surveys throughout the year. Affinity areas and areas of interest are another proven way that if you start capturing this data, when you reach out to those groups of folks about a specific fundraising appeal, it has positive results. So again, learning and understanding why your donors give, what's their why, and then communicating whatever appeal you're launching in that unique way for them, or how it impacts that affinity or area of interest. There's proven record that that does work to increase engagement and revenue. So now we're getting into communication planning and outline. I'm going to land here for just a moment, take a sip of water. So just like high school or college English class, right? We have to have an outline when we write a paper. Same thing for communications outline. It actually makes it a lot simpler. And actually something that we like to do with our teams and in my classes when we're teaching is build this out together as a group or as a small group activity, right? Who are we communicating? Who is our audience for this particular fundraising appeal or this campaign or the end of year campaign? Why? What is the fundraising theme or the backdrop? We're also going to provide you a template with a lot of different, what we call themes or hooks throughout the year and months that you can look at. For example, World Philanthropy Day, or, you know, different days like that. And then also add your own hooks that you have. What are we going to be sharing? What's our content, our core message? When are we going to be sending out this message? How often? What's the frequency? Right? Typically when we have an appeal, we'll get into that in a few slides, but there's a cadence and a frequency that we want to follow. It's not one and done. Then where are we going to be sharing this information? What platforms, what channels, right? Through email, through social media, posting on Instagram, our Facebook page, our website, right? Are we going to do text for those numbers that we have? And how? Who is assigned and who's responsible for carrying out, right? So quick show of hands, I'm going to pause here and looking at the chat. Who has a simple yes or no? Who has a communication plan outline for a fundraising appeal? Who's followed something like this to help you structure your communication? Thanks, Brittany. She says yes. It's okay to say no too. That's why we're all learning. We're all learning new things. Thanks, Paula. Well, here you go. We're going to get more into communication planning and outline, and we're going to send you quite a few templates to help you do that. Brittany says also helps with media alerts to put it together this way. Absolutely true. Brittany says not yet, but she and her team are going to get to it, right, Brittany? All right, so something to think about, right? When we think about, like when we teach writing, I teach writing and grant writing. What happens when you don't have an outline? Going back to, 10th grade English, or what the English teachers say, your writing's going to be what? All over the place. Same thing with your fundraising messaging. If we don't have some kind of outline or backbone structure, it's going to be all over the place. So you want to think about communicating who, why, what, when, where, and then assigning those who, the how, and the dates and timelines is very important. So not only do we have a content calendar or a content bank or theme, but we also have a timeline. When do the different communications go out? Some communications are more full, more robust, more heart-centered. Some are more just quick and to the point, like quick reminders. So you want to think about that. Here's a communication plan outline in a different setup. It's funny how something can look really differently or jog different aspects of the brain. But this is a great activity to do with your team. Again, if your team is 2 people, 3 people, it's really hard to create something by yourself. I've been there many times. So it's so great to use this even with volunteers, right? You get those large sticky notes, right? The large Post-it board notes, and you put one for each one of these 6 buckets. And then you give people different sticky color. This is like design thinking, communication, content plan outline. You give everybody different colored stickies, and then you just do rapid fire. Everybody has 3 minutes to fill out who are we communicating to, then 3 minutes for the why, 3 minutes for the what, or different teams could pull these information pieces together. But it's a really great way to pull everybody together and start really working on the culture of philanthropy within your organization. Right? It can't be just on one person, the executive director or the chief everything officer or the development director, right? Really thinking about how do we communicate our impact? How do we tell our story? What are our stories? We don't just have one great story. So pulling in our colleagues and different board members and volunteers, right? It's really an important piece of telling the whole story and making it a fun activity, right? I mean, fun, I guess, is relative. But making it an activity that pulls in everybody together. I guess it's fun for me, but we're a nerd that way, right? And it takes the lift off of one person, because one person can't do all of this plus keep the lights on. It's just not feasible, right? So giving people the opportunity to bring in different voices and create the message differently, right? What would different colleagues say? Why it's so important, right? Beyond well-being, why? Right, your monthly donation will sustain the mission during this critical time. Why? What's the mission, right? Why this critical time? Break that down and bring it together through different voices. That's how we start creating engagement and content that resonates across a wide variety of people, not just one or two people that are personally affected by somebody with developmental disabilities or mental illness, right? So choosing the right story. We have here about direct services, right? Has the population your organization serves required immediate and increased support? Obviously, the answer is yes. So how has your direct services been impacted throughout these 18 months? That's what we've all been putting together. We've all been pivoting our communications, right, around COVID. As COVID continues to rise and fall in different ways, right? How is your work being impacted? How's your community being impacted? Who still needs immediate services? Why, right? Invite diverse community stakeholders to join in the journey of support through the unknowns. It's really important. We've all learned that these last 18 or so months, right? There's a lot of unknowns, and navigating this time is scary for everybody. Nobody's immune, right? So really inviting folks to navigate through uncertainty is a really important and very authentic way to be honest, right? And communicate what you're trying to do. Then there's indirect services, advocacy, movement building, helping the helpers. There's been a lot around the mental health of BIPOC leaders, right? Around also the mental health and well-being of our care providers, right? So sometimes our fundraising is for a special program to support our program directors, right? So we want to share that. Youth and leadership, right? Those are all different stories that we can tell. And another marketing heavy term is creating collateral pieces, right? Collateral pieces are those content pieces. They can be videos and photos. We can collect testimonials from participants or beneficiaries, volunteers and staff. It's really important, right? To share and stay engaged by sharing volunteer stories, having them record a quick little video and uploading it. Same with staff. Why do people work at your agency? What is important to them? What's their why? Why do we do this? Sharing that, so as part of a way to stay engaged during appeals, is really important. So it's not always just about asking for money, right? It's about telling the story of who we are. Collecting testimonials from other donors is really powerful. It's something that doesn't happen too often, but capturing donors' why. So giving somebody a quick shout out on Facebook or on LinkedIn, right, for being caught doing something good is really motivating. And it's really great to shout out and highlight somebody, say, hey, Joey, thanks so much for your $25 recurring gift. Thanks for just upgrading to $30. You've been giving to our organization ABC for this long. We really appreciate, through your recurring donation, we're able to add blah, 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 right? Why wouldn't Joey love to hear that, right? And then hopefully, by tagging Joey, right, you get eyes around new people and expand your network that way, right? And who sees your caption, who sees your name on social media, and hopefully it prompts them to come say, hey, I know my buddy Joey, we play basketball together, we play tennis together. What's he giving? What's this all about, right? So again, just constantly engaging. Also brainstorming hashtags and taglines. I'll give you a tool for that. But thinking about pithy ways and engaging fun ways, also not always super heady, right? But just fun ways to constantly engage. Some things are lighter than others, and it is important to use humor and lightfulness to bring people together. Collateral pieces are also letters, emails, social posts, thank yous, right? Did you know that by the end of the year, so I always make this stat complicated, but the heart of it is that by February 27th, research shows that all year-end givers across the board, only 27% of them have been thanked. So out of all of the folks that give for year-end giving, which we're heading into that time right now, preparing, by the end of February, only 27% of donors have been thanked. So think about that, and think about how many relationships are being left on the table. People that engaged with you, people that gave to your cause, not even 3 out of 10 were thanked. What does that do for setting up another year's worth of giving, right? So when we think about, if we aim for 100% thanking, 100% acknowledgement, how we're already starting off much stronger in our cultivations and relationships than we were the year before. Also preparing a toolkit for ambassadors and champions. I always call, like, your board members are the biggest ambassadors and the biggest champions of your cause. How are you preparing a quick toolkit for them to share virtually, right? That's something that marketing should be doing, is quick social media posts, whether they post on Facebook or LinkedIn or Instagram. Give them quick, what we call copy, quick content, right? We're heading into the year. I've been a board member at ABC organization. This is why I'm involved. This is why I'm super passionate about this cause. This is what we're doing. Would love 10 of my friends to give. Give them that toolkit. Okay, 100% of board members will say that they want it. And a lot of times when we ask board members why they're not championing for the causes, because I don't know what to say. I don't want to say the wrong thing. I don't want to make a mistake, right? I didn't know I could. I didn't know I was supposed to. I didn't have the time to write it. So then when we go and follow back up and say, if you were provided a quick toolkit of sample posts with the hashtag, everything leading back to the website of the organization, would you just copy and paste that? Yeah, it's a no-brainer. So something to think about. How are you doing that? How are you leveraging? Also for your volunteers, give them a little mini toolkit to post about your organization. So there are quick ways to expand engagement beyond the ask and share with others why they support your organization. So here's more about developing the narrative, right? And this is a narrative of content pieces. What your gift will do, right? What your gift is doing, or reporting impact and success, what your gift did do, newsletters and reports. Again, this is another exercise that we can do, right? What your gift will do as a thank you. And you can put these on the board and have folks with sticky notes just come up. And it's a good collaborative way to develop multiple narratives at the same time for how we communicate what we do and how we show up in our community and what our impact is. And donors love to know what their gift went for, what their gift went towards, right? If it was a one-to-one, if we're buying backpacks for folks, if we're helping with laptops, whatever it is that we're doing, your gift did X. Something so simple like that, and a quick thank you and a text message, donors love that. It's one of the number one ways right now that folks, small nonprofits, are increasing donations is through quick thank you text messages that let them know that their donation is valued and what it went towards. So again, something to think about. Are you doing that? How could you start doing that in a quick and relevant manner? So this is that quick little tool I was mentioning about word counts, right, for different things. So just something to help guide, because a lot of folks say, well, I don't know how much to post. I don't know how long it should be. So here's just some quick marketing guidelines that might help you. And again, this is not meant to overwhelm at all, but it's meant to really get you excited about how I could do one of those, or pick out one thing that I could create, or one or two things that we could update, right? And think about new ways that we can engage, but it's not meant to overwhelm. It's meant to think about how many different ways we can tell our story and get you re-energized and pumped up to do that. So more in thinking about fundraising appeal timelines and touch points, right? There's the preparation, the creation, and the coordination, right? Fundraising does not happen overnight. Again, there's no magic bullet, right? So we're preparing, we're gathering information throughout that, we're determining our audience, thinking about segmenting, we're creating, right? We're developing the story, we have the communications outline, the content outline, we're creating collaterals, which are just different pieces of content, right? And we're coordinating literally the time that we're going to release communications or updates or newsletters, and we're going to manage the progress. How many times is our post on Facebook being liked, being viewed, right? Who clicked, who opened, who responded. And here's some emotions to trigger literally when we're doing communications: empathy, hope, joy, gratitude, and reciprocity, right? Always focus on the reciprocity and the gratitude. We want to know more about you. Invite a conversation, right? Reach out to your donors, not just for another donation or for an upgrade, but you want to reach out to them, say, hey, I just want to know why you give. Would you be open for a 5-minute conversation, right? Just quick FaceTime, right? Donors don't often get engaged like that. So when they do, it's like, oh, yeah, I would. Most time the answer is going to be yes, right? Or when would be a good time to connect sometime in these next 4 weeks, right? Again, just that communication and invite folks to learn more. This is a communication content plan outline, simple, that we are also going to share with you. But we're looking at creating a table that highlights the theme of your ask, the platform, looking at email, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, snail mail. Although snail mail has been making a comeback because postal mail has been so drastically reduced in the last decade that actually, and everybody being home, postal mail is making a comeback, so something to know. Your target audience, again, the content that you'll be creating, and the frequency. And this is what it looks like. Again, very simple. It does not need to be complicated. This is simple Excel, and we'll be sharing this with you so you can click right. It'll be an editable text, and you can copy and paste. You can do October 10th through the 31st, right, and break it down. And this is where you start copying and creating, the content that you would be adding for each one of these. And again, this is for robust marketing teams. If you can do 2 of these, remember that having 2 multi donor content channels has a lot of benefits. And what's one thing, usually I use something like this with Google Drive because you can directly link things, which starts making it a really useful tool to house all of your communications. And then once we have this ironed out for 1 4-week segment or 1 month, obviously, it's much easier to practice and put this into practice as the year or the quarter and the year goes on, right? To make it doable. This is another communications plan that we'll be sharing with you, and it's actually a long text that scrolls. So this is a crisis communications plan, but it doesn't have to be a crisis. You'll notice that there's weeks and that there's a topic, and this topic would be what our main kind of alert is, and the channel. So you have email. If we go down here, those social posts and tweets, and as you scroll through this document, which you'll get that you'll be able to write into, it has multiple channels and multiple ways to communicate. So again, it's meant to help you with the subject line, the message, and CTA is call to action, right? So it's another way to think about just templatizing, right? Templatizing your communications. Are you all still with me? Because I'm still talking to just pretty much Joey. I see your Jay-Z and I said Zoe. So I hope you guys are all with me. Now we're getting into the year-end campaign piece specifically. And typically a year-end campaign will run a minimum of 8 weeks from mid-November to early January. Thanks, Stacy. Thanks, Brittany. Appreciate you. And typically we're talking about direct mail, 10 plus emails. Thanks everybody for the love. Lots of social media posts, phone calls to engage to key donors, and then engagement statistics, right? Or engagement tactics. We're going to talk about this. Here's the communications and themes boxes. Here's specifically the year-end appeal. And I just did a cut and paste here, but the document I'll share with you actually as much as year-round. And it has quarterly different days around the year that happen that you can think about your content for. And here's some helpful hints. So collecting and uploading photos and images throughout the year, so helpful. I know it's like something that we all aim to do. It rarely gets done, but it does really make the templatizing of content and timelines much easier. Having program managers or the volunteers who are running those events write the photo captions at the time of the photo upload, right? Really important. And this is something that, as a social worker, I'm surprised how many folks still don't do this, is circulating a statistics request from each program manager regularly. So how many, really thinking in a logic model, with how outputs, how many workshops are you running or offering, how many trainings, how many after school tutoring sessions, how many walkthroughs, right? Don't mark it by committee. Yeah, it's a big one. Everybody's a critic, but nobody wants to write, right? I say this from experience. But how many instances of services are you providing, right? How many people came? So capturing that on a regular basis after every single event or training or opportunity that you offer the community. Collecting these statistics is super important because that's something that your donors want to know. You can say, last month we served, 35 individuals at their places of work when they were having a crisis moment, right? It's important to know the numbers and the stories behind, right? So we want to be circulating statistics requests from everybody that's out in the field, right? We also want to have staff solicit and write testimonials from volunteers, participants, family members, and use that to engage. Again, it doesn't always have to be about the ask. Yes, we'll be sharing the presentation. Thanks, Rosemary. It doesn't always have to be about the ask. It's about what does our work mean to our community from different perspectives, right? Just why do people volunteer? Sharing that, right? Sharing it from the consumers or clients themselves. And what we mean by, no writing or editing by committee is just that. People can offer suggestions, but don't get bogged down in changing things last minute because it'll be stalled for sure. So I always say if people want to help edit, then they can help create as well. Labeling photos, hugely important. Thanks, Brittany. Yes, and always at that time. We always know it's like, oh, I'll do it tomorrow, but it doesn't get done. Then you have 10,000 photos right at the end of the year. And you're scrambling to find the perfect shot for your newsletter, right? So designing and planning aligned communications and fundraising appeals is super important, like we've been talking about. And we're going to share this timeline with you with tasks and target dates and communication channels. And it's year-end fundraising timeline. It's a 3-page booklet that literally by date, starting October 31st through the end of the year, actually goes into January, and all the different things that you could be doing. Again, the goal is not to overwhelm. It's only meant to get you excited and pumped up about all the different things you can be doing. So now we're going to launch, right? We are ready to launch our multi-channel appeal. Again, these are the communication channels we have. You're learning new terminology here. We're going to email. We're going to do some social media posting. We're going to text. We're going to do phone calls. We're going to have our board members reach out to some VIPs or some VIPs of theirs that might be current donors, or they might be new prospects. Thinking about video messaging, super important. That's one of the key ways that 2020 folks increased their giving in 2020 is through video text messaging. And these I'm going to scroll through quickly because they're really more for your information of just the different ways. It's different examples that clients, like Real Network for Good nonprofit clients all around the country, have increased their social media presence and examples of their web pages or their social media posts. This looks like, I don't know, Facebook possibly? Yeah, it's Facebook. But posting twice a week, fold-in fundraising request, highlighting donors and key volunteers, telling a story over a period of time, keeping people engaged through telling the story, perhaps of obviously getting all the permissions, but a story of a family or a story of a client, right? Thinking about Facebook and Instagram advertising, it's much less expensive than most people expect. And thinking about who begin to know who responds to your post. What are they responding to, right? Sometimes we have those, what do they call those, influencers, right? We want to reach out to, we want to make a note. And if somebody's liked your 3 posts for this week on Friday, give them a shout out. Say, hey, Joey, thanks for liking our post this week and thanks for your engagement, right? Thanks for taking care in our cause. Really important way to highlight Joey. Again, we're looking at building and deepening relationships, wooing your influencers, right? Say, hey, Joey, I've noticed that you've shared or you've liked our comment 2 weeks in a row. We'd love to have you consider posting, right? Or sharing our content on your page, right? Most often folks are going to say yes. Who doesn't want to support a good cause and be called out for doing something good and helpful in the community, right? These are some other just tools. Being donor-centric, keeping it personal, thinking about, again, am I segmenting? How are we segmenting? Using your storytelling, having a clear call to action, letting folks know how their donation is making an impact. Make it easy to donate. If it's embedded, if it's too small, if the donate here button is tiny, right? It doesn't help. So what your prospect looks like in an appeal, there's a picture, there's a greeting or salutation, there's always a PS, always a postscript. There's obviously a signature and a body. Here's some virtual giving pages examples or things to do and don't do. You want to do, always synchronize your image and video with emails, right? So again, there's the theme and the content aligns. You want to customize giving frequency, right? So give people the different options and how to give and what amounts to give. Recognize donors in real time, again, super, super important, and can't overemphasize how little this is done, right? And so you end up with 1/8 of the donors you had, right, at the year end. So starting thanking is just a big piece of that reciprocity and that engagement level consistency. Sharing and linking across social platforms is really important, and keeping your audience updated on your progress toward a goal, right? Especially if you have a goal for end of the year, you're quarter way there, halfway there, all that stuff. Sharing those successes and that movement and repeating and sharing what the need still is a really important piece of communicating and fundraising. And these are some of the things that we're talking about. And these are actual customer pages where we have compelling visuals. Here we have different levels of giving, really quick it's easy to click, customize giving frequency, right? One time, multiple time, donate here. Here's some compelling pictures of actually people in the work, right? Thinking also about video and texting your donors and volunteers. Again, this video and texting small videos has been one of the key ways that nonprofits have increased their donations in 2020. There was 44% increase in donations in 2020. And the majority of those that were able to really leverage that was through simple, organic, informal videos via text. So a post appreciation gift, when somebody signs up or gives for the first time or becomes a recurring donor, sending them a quick thank you video, right? Get on the phone. Hi, this is Maria from so-and-so. I just noticed that you gave for the first time $25. Thank you so much. This is what your gift is going to go to. Looking forward to getting to know you better. Send, right? Just really, really quick. Folks, there's more and more research showing that donors really, really appreciate and love that kind of quick engagement in the real moment. Before, it was all about glossy brochures, about planning and all this massive editing. And the research just shows that people just don't respond to that anymore. People want, just something quick now. Make it organic. Also thinking the day before or last day of a fundraising campaign. Remember to thank folks. Good time to engage is when you've hit a major organization milestone or program milestone. To check in people's birthdays, right? If you have your donors' birthdays, you should be capturing that data. Hey, happy birthday. Well, hope you're having a great day from your friends at ABC organization. To share community news, say a new resource center is opening up or a new library is opening up across the street from you all or in your zip code. Share that too and invite them to stop by your office or your, obviously when it's safe to do so, right? But not always engaging around a financial ask is really important. Here's an email appeal outline. And again, this could be a good exercise for you to do with your team. Have everybody create an email appeal outline. It's very humbling also. It's very helpful and it's a humbling exercise, right? But there's the same format of an outline. There's a shared commitment. There's a story. there's a goal that's introduced, and what are we trying to accomplish? What will your gift do? For current donors, last year you contributed this amount. Would you consider a gift of this amount? Right? And then here's an actual client, and this is their picture of their neighborhood clinic. Who doesn't love that, right? Same, another example, social media appeal. Right, I'm just going to go through these quickly. Hashtags, important, right? Again, these are just examples, real world examples of nonprofits that are just trying new things, right? And that's what this is about, trying new things and not making it so complicated that you don't try it, right? Because we don't want paralysis by analysis, right? We want to try and learn new things. Here are additional ways that folks, real clients, are sharing ways that they engage beyond the ask, especially during COVID. For example, this was about how to stay on top of legislation, and this organization, Children's Cancer Cause, reaching out to their stakeholders about how to stay engaged with legislative issues and how they can take action, right, with their elected officials. It's really important. I'm sure you all have a lot of these things that ring true for you as well. Most of us, if you have legislative days, lobby days that you couldn't do, right? Or, getting together and having a legislator call party, things like that. These are ways that you can still connect on those important ways beyond the ask. Who doesn't love a golden retriever, right? But again, a quick text appeal, quick picture, could be a quick video, just minimum 3 messages per campaign, right? If you want have clients, obviously with their permission, they're a client with their animal, right? Everybody loves an animal. We know that animals give big upticks in increasing in readership, viewership, and donations. People love animals. And here are just some quick reminders, right? Make your campaign about the donors. Be brave, test and learn, right? We all make mistakes. You're going to make mistakes along the way, but you want to keep trying. You want to video, and more videos and more pictures, and caption those pictures, right? You want to post, maybe not daily on social media, but you want to post 2 to 3 times a week across different platforms. So if you have 2 platforms, you're posting 2 or 3 times a week on each, or even 2 a week on each. That's almost 5 days a week of posting, right? Tell lots of stories, right? Ask questions, engage, surveys, right? Create dialogue. Count we versus you, right? And this is another way to think about the donor communication cycle, right? We want to engage, we want to ask, we want to thank, report impact, and repeat. So reporting impact, dual, both internal and externally focused. We want to report the impact of all the donations that you all gave in this appeal or this year-end campaign, and also reporting the impact internally. What emails worked the best? What hashtags or what subject lines worked really strongly, right? What texts worked? What visuals worked, right? So thinking about the evaluation of our internally our operations as it regarded to our content, our marketing, and our fundraising. And we repeat what works, engage and keep trying, right? Fundraising, again, there's no overnight sensation to fundraising. Here's some time savers. None of these are new. These have all been talked about, but really good reminders. Track and celebrate your success, right? And again, I can't say enough about donor testimonials and highlighting folks that gave. It's like the groupthink mentality. If Joey gave and I play something with Joey, or we are at the dinner table or Thanksgiving table with Joey and he's telling us about it and he gave, that's going to encourage me to think about giving as well. Should I give, right? And for one of the last times I'm sharing this with you before we kick over to the next, is the moves management, and really, really encouraging you to be brave and be bold and be courageous and go from one time to subscription request. I always talk about my experience with HRC, Human Rights Campaign. They love merchandise and people love their merchandise if you know about them. And so they make it super easy to give consistently. I gave twice $5, and then they asked me if I would, and on the phone, consider becoming a monthly a $5 subscriber, and then after 3 months of that, and all I do is hit yes on my phone. They literally make it that easy. And then after like 3 or 4 times, they'll say, consider, thank you for updating or upgrading your giving for 4 months. We want to send you a special gift. Which t-shirt do you like and which size? For $5 more, you can get a hat and again, and they just keep roping me in. So now I don't even know how much I give to them every month. But the point is that it's consistent engagement. And it's making it super easy. They have all my information on. I don't have to do anything. Literally, all I have to do is hit yes on my text, right? Here's some proven tactics that you can review with your team and as you're writing and creating your content collateral pieces. And that's the end of my time, folks. So I think we're going to do some questions. That's the end of the presentation. And then my friend and colleague, Jack, is going to be talking a little bit about our Jumpstart Fundraising Capacity Building Program. But I think at this time, Joey, I'm supposed to kick it over to you and see if there's any questions that came up in the chat.
Absolutely. And we had one question I know that came in from Michael, and he writes that we are small, 5 FTEs. Our development person spends perhaps 30% of his time on everything mentioned today and rest on program. Of the gazillion things mentioned today, what are the most important for a small agency such as ours? Our board is very involved. We raise most of our private money through friends and family of the people we serve and those on the board.
Wow. Okay. Well, so 30% is there's a, they say development person that spends 30% or 70% on programming?
Yeah, 70% on programming and then 30% on the fundraising aspect is what it sounds like.
Okay, so I would wonder, my first question is, why is a development person spending 70% on program, but maybe they're programming communications? But just to cut to the main point is, what would you spend? I would focus on following templates. So 2 templates of communications and really creating the content, like the story, the content, the engagement and communication channels that you'll be using and how you'll be engaging your board. If once we can templatize that and really start kind of putting that in a production line, it gets easier to really hone in that 30% of their time or the time that they have to focus on the consistent creation of content and engagement, because that's where I would really focus. Is you don't get to the fundraising in the money coming in, so to speak, if folks don't know why they're giving or what they're supporting. So really focusing on the content creation and engaging current and new prospect donors, and then moving that communication down, right? And obviously prospect, and once people engage with you, once you've reached out to somebody and they've emailed you back or they've given $5, $10, $15, $50, right? Continuing that communication loop, not dropping the ball on consistent communications with prospects and donors is key to retention, right? And so prospecting, a lot of times we know the research takes 5 to 7 times of a touch point to get a yes, right? So thinking about how we're stewarding new or prospect donors, folks that are new to our organization that haven't yet given, how are we engaging them? And how are we deepening the relationship with current donors? What content are we creating for those 2 buckets? So prospects and current donors. And again, the consistency of, I can't say enough, content development, telling your story and constantly putting it out there on a cadence through like a 4-week template that you're using, and picking out those 2 channels of communication that you'll be using. I hope that helps.
Well, I didn't see any other questions come in other than how fast can I get this presentation out? So I think,
well, that makes my day and floats my
yes.
ego. So thank you so much. I'm glad it's been of service. I love doing this.
No, thank you, Maria. And so I guess, Jack, you are up.
Thanks, Joey, and thanks, Maria. As a total masterclass, as always. I think the feedback in the chat is, testimony to the energy here and the ideas that were taken away. So thanks so much to you, and thanks especially to everyone still with us here in the audience. We're now into the afternoon, and I'm sure folks have lunch on the mind. So I will be brief. First, by way of introduction, my name is Jack. I'm our Director of Community Impact at Network for Good. And we're just very thankful here to be in partnership with the Able Trust, both to bring this education and prioritizing this such a timely moment in the way of, looking ahead to year-end giving, and with the majority of or a large chunk of giving coming at year's end. It's the Super Bowl of fundraising, and we expect a big year's end, just like last year. But as you're thinking about next year and the years to come, it's a lot to reckon with. And Maria gave us so much great information today. But in terms of applying that in a practical sense at your organizations, surely you're thinking about, well, how do we take this and make it work for us? In that spirit, I'm very excited to be announcing a launch of a needs assessment that we're conducting in partnership with the Able Trust. We want to learn more about the specific fundraising challenges that you're seeing. Some things in the chat that we heard in the way of, shortage of time and staffing and resources. These things existed before the pandemic, and surely have been made much more difficult with all the different things that we're contending with at the small and mid-size, community-based nonprofit level, and those serving large service regions as well. But we're very excited to be launching this assessment to learn just that, to hear from you, to animate your voices, and understand what the specific capacity needs are, and how we might be able to help. We operate a program at Network for Good called Jumpstart, which in very short form is a blending together of dedicated one-on-one personal fundraising coaching, all conducted in a Zoom environment just like this. So regular dedicated coaching to help you grow your fundraising skill set, take what you're doing well and augment it, and then fill in gaps where you may need some help, whether it's building a more robust plan, building a stronger message. A lot of the things that Maria talked about today is something that we're very narrowly focused on here at Network for Good, especially with the coaches that we employ. And then there are several other legs of the stool, which again, I'm speaking very broadly here, but the program includes technology tools that we've developed here at Network for Good, donor management, online giving campaigns, peer-to-peer fundraising, event ticketing, text to give, video messaging, which I appreciate Maria's endorsement of today, because it's really been a game changer for many of our partners. So a full sort of buffet of technology tools that you have available to you through the program as well. It also includes technical assistance, a peer learning component, a great many other things. And so part of the reason why we're conducting this assessment is to determine if there's a need for such support, and whether that support is Jumpstart or another solution. Able Trust is clearly very narrowly focused on how they can help organizations like yours. So we encourage you to be on the lookout. As Joey said, he'll be sending out this recording and slide deck, but he'll also include the assessment link. So take 10-15 minutes and go ahead and fill that out. We'll be assessing, or we'll have the assessment live likely through the latter part of October. So you have plenty of time. It takes 10 to 15 minutes. And as a thank you for participating, you'll get a toolkit of 200 plus fundraising templates that you can put to immediate use for year-end giving. So we hope to see your participation in that assessment. We want to bring your voices and your challenges and sort of center them as we consider a potential partnership. And as the Able Trust considers ways to help you grow and sustain and continue to serve your the most vulnerable populations in Florida. So with that, again, just be on the lookout for that assessment. Maria and I are here for any questions that you might have as we get it out. But I'll go ahead and kick it over to Joey to bring us home today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jack. And I saw that Maria was kind enough to put her information directly into the chat box. So you all can connect with her either via LinkedIn, or I think she's dropped her email in there as well. But again, thank you all for joining us today. Like I said earlier, you all are our partners, and the more resources that we can each bring to our own organizations, the stronger we will all be, and the more we can move that needle for disability employment around the state of Florida. I know that's all what we are working towards, is empowering people with disabilities and making sure they are living the best life that they possibly can. And that's all what we are here to do. And that, I think you all know, the Able Trust wants to be the best supporter and partner with everybody around the state as we can. And so this connection to Network for Good is just a small part of how we are trying to support you all Maria and Jack, thank you so much for taking your time to share an amazing presentation with us. I actually took some notes myself. I gleaned a lot from it. Sat through a lot of development presentations here recently at the Able Trust as we've been embarking on our own strategic planning. So, it's nice to get your perspective, Maria, and, be able to integrate some of those things into our own planning as well. Give us at least until Monday to get this out to you all. We will do it as soon as possible, as soon as Zoom allows us to bring everything down from the cloud and get it on our website to share around. So knock on wood, we don't have any technological issues when the storms here in Tallahassee take a little bit of a break and doesn't screw anything up on that end. But again, thank you all. I'm always here to connect with if you need me, Joey at the Able Trust, and look forward to working with you all in the future. Final plug for us, October is Disability Employment Awareness Month. Please make sure you are celebrating the employment of people with disabilities throughout the state of Florida. Again, thank you all for today for joining us, in particular, Maria and Jack.
Thank you to the Able Trust. Thank you everyone for joining us, joining me, and thank you to Joey and the Able Trust, Jill and Allison for being our wonderful hosts and inviting us to do this. And you all have a lot of wonderful stories to share, especially in this month. So make sure you're sharing and engaging all the good stuff y'all are doing. Thanks, Jack, for being on with me. And again, thank you to all for being here. And thanks again to the Able Trust for this partnership. Good afternoon, everybody.